What's up guys, it's Acro Brandon. Today we're going to talk about some wheel pulleys and motor pulleys and installing them. So I got some metal wheel pulleys. My first set were POM, or I don't know, plastic, but not really cheap plastic. And they've actually worked really good, but I wanted something that sat on the core of my ABEC clone and definitely would be perfectly round and centerable. So I'll show you what it looks like when my other one spins around the axle. There was never really any detailed videos that talked about installing the pulleys, making sure they're centered and all that kind of stuff. I had to figure that out myself. And if it's off a little bit, it has a huge wobble, which we need to try and center. But with this, it's really nice because it's aluminum. This is 36T. Comes with a nice little retaining bracket right here. And then we've also got an aluminum motor pulley. This one's a little bit different. This is an 18T, so I'm trying to get my speed up to like 30 miles an hour. Now this one's a little bit more different than the first one that I have, as this one just slides right onto the motor shaft, but there is no keyway. So there's two set screws that are here, one on the right, one on the left. My motor shaft has a keyway in it, so I didn't feel like the set screws that are here are going to be long enough once I screw it down and then to go into the keyway groove without falling at the bottom. So I was able to find some at Lowe's that were just about a hair longer, double the size, like, I don't know, 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters in length. So that should set into the groove, creating a keyway key so this doesn't move, and then the other one will keep it from sliding back and forth left and right. So more speed, more power. Now the thing is, with these pulleys, for the wheel pulley, is that the center of this actually doesn't fit over the torque board truck or a caliber 2. So the hole's a little too tight, right? It's always too tight. So what we're gonna have to do here is on the flat sides, round this off a little bit on both sides. I don't know if I'm gonna have to do anything on the rounded side as of yet, but if you take it, you try to slide it on, boom, it's not going anywhere. It's not gonna clear the truck. It's going to be a problem, right? It doesn't matter which way it is. It'd be going like this anyways. But, so if you have a file, they say it only takes like 10 to 15 minutes to round off the sides. I don't have a file. I have a disc grinder. So I'm going to hit this bad boy with 30,000 RPMs and maybe it'll be done in like 2 minutes instead. So that's what we're going to work on. As far as the wheel's concerned, what's really cool about this one is that it's actually going to sit above the line. Okay, this is the outside of the wheel. But what you can do to align this is this hole right here is actually the same size as the bearing. So what I did is after I pulled the wheel off, I kind of just banged it partially out. I don't know if you can see it. There's like a little bit of a lip right there. Yep. So that way, when I put the wheel pulley on, I can just center it right on top of the bearing. Okay. And then if you look, that the wheel pulley actually sits, I don't even know, it's like a little fraction over the edge, which is great because what I don't want is for my belt to rub the inside of the wheel wall, which has happened on my other one. So this is really nice that if the belt starts to drift towards the wheel, it'll hit this retaining wall right here, keeping it aligned, but no rubbing on my wheel. So that's great. So we have it centered on the bearing, drop the screws in through the other way with the retaining clip, yada, 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 bada boom, bada bing, perfectly centered. No issues. This is exciting for me right here. Okay, so I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna go hit the trucks with the angle grinder, grind off a little bit of metal, and then we'll come back and see if this fits perfectly. All right, and we're back. So that took a little longer than it needed to, even with the grinder. So like I said, we definitely need to take the edge off of this side right here. Right? These two flat sides. And you don't even necessarily need to round it. Just, I mean, I used the grind. It was like, and then actually here on the part that is round, there is a little bit of an edge here. As you can see, if you knock that back just real quick and real light, then everything will roll really, really smooth because there is a little bit of drag just on those corners. But yeah, the grinder on the first half, I totally ground off more than I needed to. The truck's fine. It's still stable, but I just wasted too much time doing it. But really, you can just hit this side and kind of like hit it 1, 2, maybe 3 times, and then kind of smooth out the little corner on the left and the right. Same thing over here, and a couple quick passes on this edge on this side, and it actually fits really good. So what you'll want to do as you're doing it is I took one and I got this thing mounted That way I could kind of put it on and give it a spin as I was going, just to make sure that I was getting the right thing and getting the right roll. So I took this, we're over here. I hit this with a little spray paint so that it wouldn't, let me turn this over here, right? I hit it with just a little bit of spray paint. That way the metal's not exposed to the elements, because I don't know what the material is, but got a nice light spin, and it's actually probably on a little further than it needs to be, because once I put the motor mount back on, it spins real good, real nice and smooth, right? That way I knew I had it right. One other thing I would recommend is that making sure that the bracket is on for the most part, at least the clamp, because this is a D-shaped truck, and you are kind of rounding off some of the edges. So if you push it too far down or you grind too far down, then what is this going to clamp onto if it's round when it's meant for something that's D-shaped? So I'm just using the way I had it mounted before with the previous pulleys over here. And actually what you can see now is, I'll show you this one, I have actually a lot of like belt dust, because I know my belts have rubbed the wheel. Like you can actually see it. I'm going to try and get really close. You see these like the rubbing pattern that's like right in here. It's because in the beginning the belt was rubbing against the wheels before I did some minor adjustments. But then if you look really close, you can see how even with this underneath here, yeah, it's like it's almost still recessed, even though there's like a plastic piece that's trying to push it off of the urethane. Whereas with this one, as I showed you before, but this is actually slightly better, you can see this is fully seated, and it's still like a teeny lip where it's off of the urethane, and it'll hit the sidewall. It is never going to touch. The belt will never touch my wheels here, which is great. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull this apart, this other one right here. I'm going to show you what it looks like, because I had peeked inside one time. And when I first put these on, I didn't crank them down hard. I just made everything really nice and snug, I mean, whatever. There's a little bit of like blue Loctite and everything. But one of them was already like corroding and shit like that. Also, look at this too. I didn't know this. I had all of my motor mount right here. You can see where a nut had come loose and it started grinding into the side of the wheel pulley. That's my fault, partially. But on this, I didn't have the nuts hadn't dried with the blue Loctite, and it started to back out slowly, and it started grinding. I was like, oh, what's that weird sound? And luckily it was close to home, and then I noticed it, and I was like, oh shit, right? But even on this one, this was the first one. It was totally perfect and fine. Same deal, even though it's in there, and it's not over tightened. That's just the way it ends up being. I don't like that. I don't like that my belt could hit my tire, because look, on the exact same thing, I still have belt rubbing, right? Here's the front wheels, which would never have had a belt on it. So you can see that this is what the inside looks like when you take it out of the package. And then if the belt drifts in towards the tire, I got some rubbing initially until I was able to like start fine tuning everything. So I'm going to crack this open, and then I'll show you what the inside ring looks like, because that's starting to fall apart. Now, I should note that he has since, Mark has since updated this wheel pulley. Once I take it out, you're going to see, I mean, it's just a wheel pulley and it's totally flat underneath, but he started to add like, I don't know, a 1/4 inch or some other number, like 1/4 to 1/2 inch piece that is built in as it's cut out. That way it sits perfectly on the core, just like these do. So I wish I had had that when I got this, and then I probably wouldn't need these, but whatever. Let me break it apart for you. Okay, so I got the first one, back everything out with the driller really quick. The moment of truth. Okay, let's see. This is good, right? This is standard. It comes in on this side, whatever. And on the inside, is this the lucky one or the unlucky one? Yeah. So look, as I said, this one's like perfectly flat on the side right here. So the new ones have like a 1/4 inch or more of plastic that comes out. That way it'll sit directly on the urethane. This is one of them. This one looks like fucking shit. If you look at it, right? Really nice and close here, you can see how it's kind of chewed up from the inside, which is interesting because it's only been in there for a while. And I feel like the first time I checked it out, all of this started to crumble off. So I just plucked some of it off, but it was a little bit bigger. So let me undo the other wheel and we'll see what happens. Wheel number 2. Let's see what we got underneath here. Lots of belt dust. I can tell where the belt has been rubbing, and that rubber's like caught inside of the wheel. So there's that. This one's a little bit better. I ended up getting 2 different sized ones too, which was kind of odd. I don't know if you thought about that, but I mean, I feel like this one was slightly smaller in diameter, not because it's broken, but this is what I was supposed to get, and I think I got a slightly shorter one in the kit the first time through, so maybe that's part of the reason why this one degraded, because I had 97 millimeter wheels. This will work for large wheels, I think it is, and this was a smaller one, so maybe because this was meant for a smaller sized wheel and it was put on a 97, that there was more pressure pulling it in towards the center, which could have made it part of the degradation on it. So yeah, these wheels need a little cleaning, but these what once were rear wheels, all this dust just went on my board, will now be the front wheels, and then I'll put the fronts on the rear. I totally messed up. I should have spun the wheel on the axle shaft for you so you can kind of see the wobble. But what I'll do is I'm going to put this on now, and I'll give you a top-down view of what the spin looks like, and it should be really nice and centered. I mean, we know it's centered, so that's easy. So it's going to spin really nice, but just so you can see it visually as for a frame of reference. Hold on there. Okay, so I just have the pulley on here. I don't even have like any of the spacers or any of that stuff, but you can see how it spins really nice. It's actually probably a little too tight because the other part will be there, but see, there is no wobble to the left or to the right. It just spins nice and circular and centered like it should have. Okay, so on to the next part. What I'm going to do here is put the mounts back on, get the motors aligned. I'll probably pull the belt cover off, and then I'm going to put on the new motor pulleys because I'm excited for that, the 2-to-1 ratio. The torque on this is really good so far. What I'm trying to do is get a little more speed, so I'll be interested to see how that affects torque, if at all. But we're looking at going from a top speed of 24, 25 miles an hour, supposedly up to 30, so that's exciting. For me, I don't find 25 is fast, yes, okay, and especially if I fall and eat shit, it's going to hurt. But I don't find the speed of 25 like, oh my god, that's so fast, I'm scared to go up there. 25, okay, cool. So I'm hoping that 28 to 30 is gonna like give me a little run for my money, and like otherwise up to 25 the board is holding quite stable, so that's another thing. I don't want to find out about, you know, speed wobbles. Cuckoo clock, cuckoo, right? We're all cuckoo. We're cuckoo for electric boards. All right, let's get to the next part. So I got the motor mounts back on. I've got everything disassembled. I pulled off the original pulley, which is here, right, which has the keyway in it. And as you can see, here's the keyway. Let's see if this focuses as I get in there really close. And over here, I'm going to show you the 2 screws. Let's see if we can get it. You can see that even as I get really low, yeah. The one on the left is the one that I got from Lowe's. Come on, focus in. There we go. Slightly longer than the other, but actually it almost, I don't think it's actually going to matter at this point, because if I take this here and I try and put the screw inside the key groove, it actually doesn't like perfectly fit inside of the keyway. So I'm hoping that when I start screwing it down, that it just kind of snugly fits in there. Maybe it will screw and kind of like open up the sides a little bit, but I don't know. Let's see. I'm going to install that and then I'll come back to you in a second. So yeah, everything is on there really strong now. It's seated in pretty good. I didn't feel like it necessarily went into the groove any harder, but I can't pull it off. It feels on there really snug. So I assume that one is seated into the groove really good. The second one is onto the main shaft of the motor, keeps that from sliding back and forth as well, so it's double locked in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slap the wheel on, see how many spacers I need to place between the axle here, because I'm going to put the one axle spacer, maybe a couple washers, see how the wheel sets on here, because the wheel pulley is a little bit offset and sitting out a little bit wider. So I have extra axle to work with, so I might push it out a little bit. That way I don't need to shove this in anymore, if that makes sense. So that's the next step, and then we'll come back. Okay, so we're almost there. The good news is that everything's on, it fits, yada, yada, yada. However, since the pulleys, this is a 15, this is an 18, obviously it would take a little more size to get an 18 in there. Since this one is bigger than this one, you can see, right? Look over it, right? Or we could just stand them up side by side. Right. So the 18T pulley motor pulley is a little bit larger in diameter, which means that it consumes a little bit more of the belt, which in turn means that the idler pulleys are not going to work with this as of right now until I get a bigger belt. I don't know what that new size is going to be, but I feel like the tension is good enough for right now. It's not too loose. I mean, that's not a bad little squeeze. It could probably be like here, but I think this is probably manageable. So I'm going to try and set up the other side and take it for a little test run and then see how things work, because I want to take the board into the city tomorrow. It's for my commute. I need to make sure it's going to work. If not, then I'll put back my regular pulley until I get a larger belt. Then I can put the pulley cover on and the idlers and all that other good stuff. Okay, so until we go for a test ride, I think is the next thing. All right, well, I've got everything back together. I'm going to take it on a test ride. I ended up switching up back to the irregular belts. I'm going to come around here a little bit and turn it down so you can have a good view. So there is still some play, right? I mean, that's a little squeeze. It's not too bad, which is interesting because I put a brand new belt on just to see how it would fit, and the brand new belt had more slack than these other belts, even though they're the exact same size, which is interesting. So I'm going to have to look into that more. So I'm going to take it for a test ride, see how it does. It's definitely a little looser than I would like. I'd prefer to have the idlers, but I'm going to have to find out what size of a bigger belt I'll need for this in order to make that happen. But I'm going to go out for something conservative and fun, because if this thing really does 30, that should be awesome. All right, I'll report back in a little bit. All right, so let me wrap up this video. I'm going to give you an update. I've been riding these pulleys for almost a week now, if not a little bit more. I want to tell you about how it feels, how they're working, the belts. I'll have a couple more videos here beyond this. So let's talk about the gearing. It's 2-to-1 gearing. So we're having 18 on the motor, 36 on the wheel pulley versus the 15-36, which was right around like 2.4 or something like that before. Amazing, like so much more fun. Okay, we're definitely doing close to 30. I think it's the GPS is saying my top speed's around 29 miles an hour. I weigh 140 pounds. I'm not too heavy. 6355 motors. Okay, so 30, this is fun. Now we're talking. So normally I go up to like 25. 25 is okay beforehand with the other one, but 30, it's like, we get up to 30, it's honestly, for me, it's still not fast enough. I could go, I don't know, I want another 5 miles an hour just to see, but the board is still very steady at 30. The torque is good. I'm not having any issues climbing up the hills that I normally have. I don't have hills because I'm not in San Francisco, but I do have to climb an occasional steep hill here and there. There was no major loss in torque between going from a 15 to an 18 on the motor pulley. It was definitely pulling a little bit harder on the 15 versus the 18, but that aside, totally worth the trade-off for higher top speed. So the belts, I'm going to give you another video because this one's getting long now that talks about where we can get some belts, but basically the belts that came with the kit originally with the 15-36 gearing were 330s, and so if it's a 5 mil pitch between the motor pulleys or the wheel pulleys, and I added 2 more teeth to the motor pulley from a 15, actually 3, right? So 15 to 18. That should be somewhere between 10 to 15 millimeters more on the belt that you could go for. So I went with a 340 millimeter belt, and it actually fits a lot better now. I'll make a different video, but now I can get both of the idler pulleys on. I squeeze them down nice and gentle. Everything's back to normal. I was putting the, I'm able to put the pulley cover back on. But what I will say is even with the 330 belts that I have and that little bit of slack that you just saw, without idlers, it was quiet, like super quiet. I was used to the sound of the belt going and the bearings and the idler pullers and all that kind of stuff. Honestly, with the belt a little bit loose, like you've seen before here in the previous part of this video, and no tensioners, my board was like super freaking quiet while I was riding it around. I thought it might be a little bit dangerous because, I mean, the tension's light, it could skip a tooth or something like that, other things that I've read about on the forums, but it held up just fine. It was nice and quick, and it just like took off like super quiet. At any rate, I highly recommend a 2-to-1 ratio. I think that's tons of fun. So the only way I can get a little bit faster is, I have 3 options really, right? Buy more motors with the higher kV, I can't afford new motors, even though I bought 2 off of eBay for $100, which I'll do another review on here soon. A battery, a 12S battery, that'll help me go faster, or bigger wheels. So bigger wheels are not in my budget right now, so I think I'm gonna build a 12S battery here pretty soon, and I'll do a video on that. I have a ton of those 10S 2P batteries that are being sold on eBay by Alarm Hookup. They're really cheap. I bought like 3 or 4 of those for my e-bike. They've been laying around. I don't really need them anymore, so they're just kind of sitting there, and I have nothing to do with them, so why not build a bigger battery, right? So I'm gonna take these, I'm gonna probably take 3 of them, so that's a 10S 2P times 3, that's 60 batteries worth. I could at least build a 12S 2P, if not a 3, but fuck it. If I got 60 batteries in a 12 series, that means a 12S 5P, even though they're not rated for high amp. I mean, whatever, what am I gonna do with these extra little batteries laying around? So upcoming will be a 12S 5P build out of the LG EAMF 16850s from Alarm Hookup. I'm going to use those, and then I'll just have a fun battery pack that I can plug in and see what the boost is like. I think that'll be kind of cool, even if it gets short range or it doesn't have a whole lot of like amp output. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. More DIY electric skateboard stuff to come.